So yesterday we have talked about these different kingdom systems, starting from the two kingdom to the six kingdom system along the domain, right? The three domain system, and we have learned the different criteria that has been utilized, that has been used by a different set of scientists to actually classify the organisms. And we have also discussed about the five kingdom classification given by R.H. Whitaker and why it is taken as a standard as of now, and why we will learn about that even in this standard of class 11 to understand the different class, the classification system that is given by Whitaker, five kingdom. And what were the criteria that was taken by Whitaker? We have learned about it. And in today's class, as we have discussed yesterday, we are going to start with the first kingdom, that is Kingdom Monera. Remember that we are going to start with the Kingdom Monera. Can you tell me what is the second kingdom? Any idea what is the second kingdom?
Protista.
Protista. Then fungi, then plantae, then animalia.
Animalia.
Very good. So now when we go from the Monera, then you have the Protista, right? Then we are going to have the fungi or mycota, followed by plantae, and followed by animalia. Now, what you have to keep in mind is that when we go from the Monera kingdom to the Animalia kingdom, right? What we're saying, we're going from something simple to complex, simpler organisms to the more complex organisms, because we know what we have done or what has been done in the classification system is we start with prokaryotes, right? And this prokaryotes happens to be unicellular. Two, they have reached the multicellular organisms, and these are eukaryotic in nature. Sakti Swarup Panda, your audio is very clear and on. Can you just switch off? Sakti Swarup Panda, are you online?
Yes, sir.
Why are you switching on your mic and talking, man?
No, sir. I was unknown about that.
Do not do
Sorry,
that.
sir.
Okay, so now we're going to start with the first one. And anyway, Sakti sir, if you are not interested, you can always leave the classroom, right? It is not going to be compulsory for anyone to attend. Not interested, you can leave the class.
Sorry, sir.
Anyway, so dear students, as I was talking about the first kingdom, Kingdom Monera. So what you see on the screen now is an electron micrograph, right? We used electron microscopes. Now, these are much different from the regular microscope that we see in the laboratory, right? We have like 5x, 100x, right? In these, we can go to thousands time magnifications. And in this, you can see these tiny organisms in a much larger form. And this particular image that you are seeing, it is impossible to see in a regular microscope, right? In a tabletop or your laboratory microscope. So this is an electron micrograph on a particular type of bacteria, and you can see how they look. Right, this is one type, as I said, because we have another different types of microbe based on the shape also, right? So anyway, we'll talk about that. So to start with, the Kingdom Monera, it is going to include all the prokaryotic organisms as we talked about. Now, what are the prokaryotic organisms? One of them is going to be the mycoplasma. Then we have the bacteria. Then we have the actinomycetes, and that is the filamentous bacteria. And then we're going to have the cyanobacteria or the blue-green algae. Now, many times what happens, many people confuse the blue-green algae, or simply refer to as the BGA, as a different form of algae, right? They consider them as the algae. But again, reality is these are cyanobacteria. Right? Why these things are important? Why they are confused with the blue, or why they are given the name blue-green algae? We'll talk about that at a later point of time. Anyways, so they are microscopic unicellular organisms. So first thing you have to keep in mind is they are prokaryotic and they are unicellular in nature. Now it is going to have no nucleus, and they're going to have the genetic material organized in a specialized place associated with protein that are positively charged. And what do you call that area, right? Where do you have the where do you have the genetic material in the prokaryotes? What do you call that particular region? It's
Nucleoid, sir.
Nucleoid, very good. It is called the nucleoid. Now remember, nucleoid is only found in case of prokaryotic organisms and not in eukaryotic organisms, right? Eukaryotic organisms will have nucleus. So the difference here is eukaryotic organisms and prokaryotic is the prokaryotic organisms lacks a true nucleus. Okay, karyon refers to the nuclei. If you remember, primitive nuclei. That is the case in case of the Monera because they are all prokaryotic. Again, they also lack. The next point you can see they also lack membrane-bound organelles. There are no membrane-bound organelles here. Now, back to our first organisms to evolve on the planet because they are simple at around 3.5 billion years ago. And they are cosmopolitan. Cosmopolitan is the word that we have to use when we find something everywhere, like literally everywhere. These bacteria, they're typically found everywhere on the organism's body, on the surfaces of different things that we see. In extreme conditions, like extreme temperature, thermal vents where the temperature is like more than hundreds of degrees actually. We find them in extreme cold Arctic areas. We find them at the bottom of the sea, right, where the light never reaches and where the pressure is also enormous. So they can survive in any given condition, and that is the reason why they are called cosmopolitan. Their habitat is cosmopolitan. They are found everywhere. Now, and the branch of biology, when people study the bacteria, this branch of biology is called bacteriology. Just like virus, virology, bacteria is called bacteriology. Now, what I've shown you here is a simple structure of the bacteria. Now, if you can see here, one second. Yeah, so you can see here, these are the outer layers, right? These are the outer layers. This is called a capsule, and inside the capsule we are going to have the cell wall. So we all know that typically an organism like the bacteria have a cell wall, but there is an additional layer also, which is called a capsule. Now the capsule can be thin or it can be thick, and based on that we can have different types of organisms, different type of bacteria. Again, regarding this we will talk in the cell chapter later on. Now, inside the cell wall, of course, we are going to have the next layer that is called the cell membrane. You can see in this area. And inside the cell membrane, what do you see? You see the cytoplasm, and in the cytoplasm, we are going to have the chromosome floating, right? It is this entire structure is the chromosome, and they're going to be floating in the cytoplasm, and they are going to be associated with certain positively charged protein. And that's why they form the nucleoid region. As you can see, it is also labeled, it is called the nucleoid region. There is no nucleus here, but there is definitely a nuclear organizing region that is called the nucleoid region. Now, apart from that, what you see, there are two more structures that you see on the outer side. Of course, inside you'll have some organelles, ribosomes, but again, the ribosome is slightly different. I'll tell you how it is different. So here we are going to have this small bristle-like structure, yes, called pili, and the large structure called the flagellum. And the flagellum will help in locomotion of the movement in this bacteria. Yes, somebody is asking something.
Sir, Shakti.
Yeah, please ask.
Sir, in case of bacteria, as I have read that there is both linear DNA and circular extra chromosomal
Coming to that,
DNA.
yes, I'm coming to that. I've just started the concept, right? So I'll talk about that. Yes, you're right. So we will talk about that. So what we are showing here in this particular picture, it is a chromosomal DNA, right? So just a minute. Okay, I'll end this one and then I'll show you now. And you asked that one.
Yes.
So Monera, that is your bacteria. As Shakti is asking, sir, we have two types of DNA. It's right. Now these two types of DNA, one is called the chromosomal DNA. Right. Now, what do you mean by chromosomal DNA? This chromosomal DNA is essential for the organism. The bacteria or the monerans must have this chromosomal DNA for the organism to survive in a normal condition. This is going to regulate all the metabolic reaction and all the other processes that we are talking about in an organism. Just like we have chromosomal DNA, there is a regular chromosomal DNA. Now, the second type is called the plasmid DNA. Right. Now, what is a plasmid DNA? Now, the plasmid DNA is typically circular. It is not linear. It is going to be circular in nature. And this plasmid DNA is going to be extra chromosomal. It is apart from the chromosome, right? It is in addition to the chromosome. Now there are different type of plasmids. You have the R plasmid, you have the F plasmid, and the number goes on. So this different type of plasmid, what role do they have? They provide additional features or additional benefits to the organism. For example, if an organism is going to have the R plasmid or antibiotic resistance plasmid, the R plasmid, what happens? They might contain antibiotic resistance plasmid. What is that? See, many times what happens when we are infected with a bacterial disease, bacterial infection, what we do? We take the antibiotics. Now, this antibiotics, right? What is the work of this? They act on the bacteria and they kill the bacteria. Very simple thing. Now, if the microbe or if the bacteria has one of this plasmid DNA, this plasmid DNA might contain a gene that can basically counteract this antibiotic. So this resistance gene present in the plasmid will enable the bacteria to survive even if there is antibiotics. Right? For example, kanamycin, erythromycin, right? And then you have this ampicillin, tetracycline, right? Penicillium, all of these are antibiotics. So in these, bacteria will simply die. But they can, the plasmid, if the bacteria is having the plasmid DNA, it is going to give the additional feature, for example, in that case, to survive even in the presence of the antibiotic. If the bacteria was not having the plasmid, then the bacteria would have been dead otherwise. So you have the chromosomal DNA, that is a linear DNA that we talk about, double stranded linear DNA, whereas the plasmid is typically the circular double stranded DNA that provides an additional feature to the organism. Are you clear with that? Are you all clear with that? Hello?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Fine. So let's move
Sir,
on.
what is the function of extra chromosomes?
That is what I just now explained, right?
Sir, same function, sir, as the plasma
Yes.
plasma DNA hub.
Not plasma DNA, there is a plasmid DNA, right? What I said is plasmid DNA itself is extra chromosomal DNA. Plasmid DNA, the meaning is it is extra chromosomal DNA. It is present in association, in addition to the chromosomal DNA. Right? It is scientific name. It is the name for the extra chromosomal DNA that we are talking about. These two are the same. Okay?
Excuse me, sir.
Yeah.
Sir, I have a doubt that whether it is present only in bacteria cells or all prokaryotics.
Prokaryotes, what else you have? Bacteria is the major components, right? And they're present only in bacteria,
Yes.
not in the mycoplasma, right? They are not present in the mycoplasmas. Okay, only in the bacteria. Okay, clear? Yeah, let's move on.
Yes.
Okay. So, as we were talking in the beginning, based on the shape of the bacteria, there are going to be, we can classify them into different groups. For example, the first one, you have the cocci. Cocci means what? Here, you can see the bacteria is going to be spiral in shape. Now, the bacteria can also be, rod shaped, like elongated rod shape, as you can see in this case, and they can also have the spores. And in that case, they are called the bacillus. Bacillus refer to the rod shaped bacteria, right? Then you have the spirillum. In the spirillum, you can see spiral shape, right? And they're going to have number of flagella on either side, and that is called the spirillum. Then you have the comma-shaped bacteria, that is called the, okay, I think I made a mistake while typing now. It is not spirillum, it is the vibrio or vibrium. That is going to be the comma-shaped bacteria. So based on this, we also have the naming of the bacteria. For example, in the first case, we can have Streptococcus, Staphylococcus, right? Then you have Streptobacillus, Staphylobacillus. So the different name, and of course, you have the organism that causes the cholera, that is Vibrio cholera. The name of the organism, name of the microbe is also based on the shape of the organism. Now, you learn in the NEET classes that these again are not the only thing. There are many more variations of these shapes, and you will know many more examples of that. And you also know the types of bacteria based on the number of flagellum. For example, you have Atrichus, Monotrichus, Lophotrichus, Peritrichus, Amphitrichus, and all of these are based on what? Based on the type of flagellum or the number of flagellum. So we will learn about all of these additional concepts in a later part in the additional classes. So in general, we can classify the Monera into two groups. One is called the Archaebacteria, okay, and the second group is called the Eubacteria. Okay, can anybody tell me what is the term "eu" refers in biology? EU, right?
True, sir.
True, sir. Very good, very good. So "you" refers to the term, to the word "true." So here Eubacteria refers to the true bacteria, right? Anyway, these are the names given earlier. So Eubacteria refers to the true bacteria, and this Archaebacteria, right? They're supposed to be called the primitive bacteria, and this primitive bacteria, they can live in extreme condition, extreme environment, extreme habitat. And these Archaebacteria, based on their cell wall modifications or cell wall differences, they can be different types. What are those three major groups that we have to understand? Now, in that, what all things we have? We are going to have the first group as the methanogens, right? Next, we are going to have the thermoacidophiles, and finally, we are going to have the halophiles. So let's talk about the first one, methanogens, right? So these methanogens are going to be methane producing bacteria. Now, these bacteria can convert the CO2 in swampy area. Swampy means what? Where you know that there will be a lot of moisture or water and a little bit warm condition, right? So in that area, there is going to be conversion of CO2 into methane. And they typically convert the organic substances. For example, you know about cow dung, right? Biogas plant you all might be knowing about. So in the biogas plant, what we do? We place the cow dung in an anaerobic condition, and that what happens, the bacteria, the methanogens, they can convert that into methanes, right? We get that. And one of that example of this bacteria is called the Methanococcus. Now the Methanococcus or the methanogens can convert the organic substances and produce methane. So they are also present in the rumens of cattle, right? It is a part of the alimentary canal in the cattle, and where it is going to digest the cellulose by fermentation and convert that into the methane. And again, for an example of that is going to be the Luminococcus. Again, if you can understand, coccus refer to the spherical shape of the bacteria. So methanogens are going to produce the methane by acting on the organic substances. Now the second one is going to halophiles. Halophiles refer to the organisms or the bacteria here that are going to typically live in the salty area, or in they're called salt loving organisms, and they typically live in extreme salty area, right, where the salt concentration is much higher. Other organisms typically may or may not be able to survive, but they can, and they are typically non-photosynthetic. Somebody is asking a question or what? Yes.
Sir, in case of the rumenogens,
methanogens.
For digesting the cell, yeah. In case of rumens, sir, the cattle rumen.
Yes.
Cellulose is digested by cellulase enzyme, right? So
yeah,
partially,
not completely.
Yes.
Even in our case, what happens is we have certain microbe in our gut that is going to help in the digestion of cellulose, right? And that is why when we take a lot of antibiotics, the digestion is typically affected. Okay, so they're called probiotics. Or these bacteria, they actually live in the gut, and they help in digestion of the food material. Clear? Okay, anyway, I'm going to go forward. So the next one is going to be thermoacidophiles. Now, thermoacidophiles, they're going to live in a condition or area where there is a lot of heat and acidic environment. They can survive. So these Archaebacteria typically can be found in areas where there is a lot, like 100 degrees temperature and plus. So temperature is approximately 80 degrees to 100 degrees centigrade, and the medium, the pH can be lesser. That is, it can be acidic in nature. And these are typically aerobic bacteria, and they can be found in hot sulfur springs. Hot springs, the temperature is much higher. It is not your regular 30-40 degrees. They are typically in the range of 100 plus degrees centigrade. And in these areas, one more common thing you would have known is going to be the Yellowstone National Park. Even in some of the movie, these has been shown. Yellowstone National Park, there is going to be a hot spring where you can see the bacteria like this. Now, when we talk about the U bacteria, right, one of the common one is going to be cyanobacteria. As we said, cyanobacteria, as the name suggests, blue-green algae, or we are talking about BGA. Remember, in sometimes examination, we have a NEET entrance examination, they will write nothing except BGA. So remember, BGA refers to cyanobacteria. So this BGA or cyanobacteria, they are going to contain the chlorophyll molecules, and that is why these are the photosynthetic autotrophs. They are going to produce their own food beside the plants. Now, cyanobacteria were the first organism that produced oxygen on the earth, and that's why they gave rise to or they help in the other organisms to evolve over the time. And the cyanobacteria can be unicellular, for example, in case of spirulina, can be colonial in case of Anabaena, or it can be filamentous in case of Oxyloteria. On the right, what you see a filamentous BGA, that is going to be noster. And what is important in here is you have to understand the fact that many of these cyanobacteria are specialized cells, right? And why they are going to have the specialized cells? These specialized cells help in just a second. These specialized cells, they help in fixing the atmospheric nitrogen, right, into nitrates and nitrites, and that is called the heterocyst, right? This particular part you can see, these are heterocyst. Now you might ask why these specialized cells are required. See, for the nitrogen fixation, there is an enzyme called nitrogenase, and this nitrogenase acts on a condition when there is no oxygen. If oxygen is there, the nitrogenase simply cannot act, and for that reason, this nitrogenase is going to be given in an oxygenic condition, and that is possible when you have a specialized condition like the heterocyst cell in case of cyanobacteria. Right, so this is what you have to keep in mind when we talk about the blue-green algae, filamentous blue-green algae. Now, later on, in a later point of time, when we talk about the plant physiology, in that we will learn the entire process of the function of nitrogenase, and how the plants which are aerobic, they the bacteria which are aerobic, they are going to maintain the anaerobic condition inside a particular cell. Next one is going to be chemosynthetic autotrophs. Right, now yesterday we are talking about it. Somebody is asking what is chemosynthetic autotrophs. So here, of course, there will be non-photosynthetic autotrophs. They are not going to have the chlorophyll, and they are going to be much away from the sunlight. The sunlight may not reach them. So what they do is they use the chemical reactions, or they use a metabolic reaction, and they're going to oxidize these chemical compounds, get energy out of it. Right. So whenever you oxidize means what? We're going to kind of burning. When we burn something, we oxidize it, and from that we obtain the energy for the this in case of chemosynthetic autotrophs. So here there is no photosynthesis of water, just like what we have in case of the photosynthetic autotrophs, and that is why they are going to receive hydrogen from other inorganic substances. And one of the examples is going to be the sulfur-producing organisms, sulfur-producing bacteria. The next one that we're going to talk about is going to be the heterotrophic bacteria. Now, the heterotrophic bacteria, as you can understand, they're not going to be dependent, they're not going to be independent for the food requirement, they're dependent on something else. So these are the most abundant in nature, right? Most common in the nature, and they are going to produce, they're going to cause disease in the organisms. They are helping in the formation of curd from the milk. They are helping in the production of antibiotics, and also they're going to help in the nitrogen fixation in the legume plants, right? So these again we're going to learn, as I said, in the later chapters. And some of them, as I said, are going to be pathogenic in nature. Pathogenic means what? They can cause disease in the organisms, in case of plants or in case of animals. And for example, cholera is also caused by the Vibrio cholera, as we know about. Now, next up we have the mycoplasma. Now, what are mycoplasma? Mycoplasma is again a type of bacteria, or the monerans, not bacteria, sorry, this is a monera. And here, this organism is going to completely be devoid of any sort of cell wall. There is no cell wall. We all know that bacteria have a cell wall, right, which is made up of the this your. Hello, somebody is asking. What happened? it is off. So anyway, so here as I said, the mycoplasma is going to be consisting of only the cell membrane, and there is not going to be any sort of cell wall in this case. And one thing you have to keep in mind is these are the smallest living organism, and they are also referred to as the PPLO, pleuropneumonia-like organisms. Right, PPLO, pleuropneumonia-like organisms, also the mycoplasma. And one thing you have to keep in mind is that they can survive without oxygen. They can survive in an anaerobic condition. And many of these mycoplasma that is known to humans are going to be pathogenic both to the plants and to the animals. So that is what you have to understand with regards to the with regards to the kingdom Monera. Yeah. Okay. Now, did you understand these things?
Yes, sir.
Monera?
Yes.
Sir.
Okay. So how much time we have? We have 10 more minutes. Shall we start the next kingdom Protista, or should we start tomorrow?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Tomorrow.
Okay. Tomorrow? Okay. Whatever you say. If you say tomorrow we can start. No problem. Anyway, this is also tomorrow. Fine. So anyway, this is a short chapter. So the kingdom Protista will get over tomorrow definitely. That is, we have to talk about the basic features of the kingdom Protista, and then we talk about euglena, right? Why the euglena was a problem in keeping in plant or animals, because it is going to show the traits of both plants and animals. So that I'll explain you tomorrow, along with the different types of Protista we will talk about. And then the next class, right, we'll go on to the fungi. Fungi may take 1 or 2 classes, and with that, the chapter will get over. Yes, somebody is asking something.
Sir,
Yes, sir.
the cyanobacteria is also known as the filamentous blue-green algae, right? So it will
It
come
is
under algae, or
no. As I said, the blue-green algae is a name given to them. They are very much bacteria. They are actually going to be having the chlorophyll pigments, and that's why the name earlier was given the BG or blue-green algae. But do not confuse that with anything else. It is nothing but the Monera members, or that is the bacteria itself. Okay, eubacteria that too. So better to remember the name cyanobacteria, but you should know that cyanobacteria is nothing but the BG or BGA or the blue-green algae. Clear?
sir, it means the cyanobacteria is known as blue-green algae because of the presence of chlorophyll only.
Yeah, that's the name given. 2 names are given. Right, okay, I'll give you a better example for that. You need to understand that. So in class 9, they have learned about different organisms, right? And the common names also were there. So one thing that you would have marked in class 9, I don't know, I hope you would have forgotten that by now. In class 11 also we have some of that. So there are common name of the organisms. Some of the organisms are there, which are going to have some kind of fish. Okay, now name will be fish, but it is not going to belong to the Pisces. It will belong to somewhere else. So sometimes the names are going to be confusing. So here what happens, although we are going to have the name BGA or the blue-green algae, you have to remember that it is not an algae. It is, we are talking about the bacteria, that is the cyanobacteria. See, very simple thing is the chlorophylls are typically present in the algae and the plants, right? And that's why when people find out, people obviously, they will be convinced that it is not anything else, but it is an algae because they have chlorophyll. But again, obviously by now we know that these are not algae, these are going to be bacteria only.
Yes, sir.
Yes,
Sir?
yes.
Sir, yesterday I have asked about the Thales organization.
Yeah, okay, Thales organization. Right, so we are anyway going to talk about that in the kingdom Plantae, because where we talk about the thallophytes, right? So Thallophyta is going to be one group where we are going to talk about the Thales organism. So in brief, I'll tell you. So what happens is, in case of plants, in a typical plant that we see outside, what we see? We see different parts of the plants. That is going to be your stem, root, leaves, right? It is quite organized, right? But in something like, let's say the Markansia, right, which are going to be very simple, or the most primitive plants, or in that case, which belong to the thallophytes, in that you have a mass, you do not have any differentiation into the roots, leaves, or let's say the other aerial parts. right? It is undifferentiated. There is no separation, there is no differentiation into the various plant parts, and that's why that is called the thallus, or that they belong to the thallophyta. And when we talk about thallus organization, we see how this thallus is going to be evolving and how the thallus is going to separate itself or differentiate itself into the different parts, like the roots in the beginning, right? Actually, roots does not form. From that, we go to the rhizoid, and from the rhizoid, we go to the roots actually. And slowly, what happens? The vascular bundle also start developing. So, thallus is basically the most simplest form of the body organization in case of plants, right? In case of thallophytes, and as you go on from there to the higher divisions, like thallophytes, bryophytes, pteridophytes, gymnosperm, angiosperm, there is going to be a gradual increase in the complexity and increase in the developmental process in this particular plants. Clear, Sitish? Anyway, we'll talk about that in the
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Anything else? Anything else? Yes, sir. Yes, Swagat.
Sir, what is the content of the cell wall of bacteria?
Hello. What is the content of the
Yes, sir.
content
Cell
of
wall of bacteria.
cell wall of bacteria? Cell wall of bacteria is going to be consisting of some of the amino acids, and if I remember correctly, it is going to be some of the polysaccharides, something like peptidoglycan, if I remember correctly, right? Sugars, of course.
It's composition, sir.
I'm sorry.
Peptidoglycan composition, right?
Peptidoglycan composition. I think yesterday, one second. Yesterday I had shared one slide in that we had seen. I think that one. Just a second. I think it might be there somewhere. Yeah, I'm going to share the screen again with you, just to tell you what I said. 1 second. Yeah, I hope you remember the screen. Yeah, you remember the screen? Polysaccharide, that is your sugar.
Yes, sir.
Sugar with amino acids. So, how many of you know what amino acids are?
Sir, the monomeric unit proteins.
Oh, very good. So when we are having the proteins, so the proteins are going to be made up of these monomeric units that are called amino acids. So amino acids, along with that of the polysaccharide. Polysaccharide means it's a long chain of sugar, right? So these two components together, they are the major components of the cell wall in case of the Monera kingdom, or the bacteria, that is clear. Swagat?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Okay. Anything else? Yeah, we are running out of time. We are having 2-3 minutes, I guess. Okay.
Sir, does heterotrophic bacteria follow parasitic nutrition?
Heterotrophic bacteria, they will follow parasitic nutrition, of course, because not all again. See, any organism that are, what do you mean by parasite? Parasite means it is living on a host organism without killing the host organism, right? So typically what happens when we talk about the parasite lives on the host, derive nutrition from it, it grows, and finally it might cause some harm to the host organism, right? So here the bacteria we are talking about, there are something like the Vibrio cholera and many others. For example, Mycobacterium, they are going to depend, they are going to live on the host organism, which can be humans, as a host, as a parasite. So they do follow parasitic mode of nutrition. Heterotroph is a general term for saprophytic, parasitic mode of and hologen mode of nutrition. Clear on that? Sure.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Hello, anybody else? Okay, I hope we are clear on this part. Then let us meet tomorrow, and tomorrow we'll continue with the next concept, and the next concept is going to be on the kingdom. That is your next kingdom, protists, right? Yeah. So in that,
Protista.
yeah, in that we'll talk about. Okay, how many of you know about bioluminescence? Bioluminescence. Have you heard of that? Heard of that? Bioluminescence. Probably no. Okay, I'll.
No, sir.
Okay, I'll tell you something else.
No, sir.
Okay, 1 second. You have seen that insect. I forgot the name of the insect. Firefly, right? That actually glows in the night. That is the insect, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
sir.
Yeah.
Yes,
So you
sir.
have seen, yes, exactly. So you have seen that, right? In that, what you see? You see the firefly. When it is going to come in the nighttime, what you see? It is going to glow, right? Is it not going to take electricity from outside? But it is something that is happening inside the organism. So something similar you see even in the case of these protists. So they have the one property of the bioluminescence. Anyway, just quick thing I remembered, so I'll just tell you. Anyway, tomorrow we'll talk about that. Fine then. Okay, I'm going to close the session. It is almost time, right? So let's meet tomorrow.
Thank you, sir.
I'm going to share you the
Thank you,
PPT now.
sir.
Thank you,
Thank you, sir.
Yeah. So I'm going to share you the
Thank
PPT now.
you, sir.
Thank you all. Thank you all.